Good time zone to you all. I'm Ginny D, and I make videos about D&D, role-playing, character development, stuff like that. One of the things I've talked about a little on this channel is that DMs have a difficult job, in many ways more difficult than players. But since we're all playing a game and we all want to have fun, it can sometimes suck for DMs if they feel overloaded or if they start to get burnt out. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about how we draw the line between what's the DM's job and what's the player's job, and whether or not blurring that line can help more evenly distribute the load of game running. So let's talk about that. There are things that definitely need to be the DM's job, and then there are things that definitely need to be the player's job. But I'm beginning to think that there are a lot of things that can fall into a sort of a gray area between the two. And I think that's a huge opportunity to take some of the burden off the game master's shoulders. Plus, if players are maybe less engaged or having trouble staying focused between their combat turns or while other characters are in the spotlight, finding more ways that they can be involved and really take ownership over the game could help with that too. I've seen the idea of player jobs coming up a few times on Reddit. It's pretty simple. Players choose or are assigned one task traditionally performed by DMs and take full responsibility for it. I'm not gonna act like I have all the answers here, but I've been sort of musing on this topic lately and I have some pitches. These can each be their own job, or you might want to combine some related jobs depending on how much a player wants to take on. And of course, not every game would benefit from every job that I'm gonna mention here. These are just ideas. If you like to use music or soundscapes to create an immersive environment for your game, or if you want to but haven't been able to find the time to incorporate these things, managing music is a great, easy contribution for players to make that doesn't give them any undue power over the game itself. They can spend time outside of the game putting together playlists if they want, or just pull up other people's Spotify playlists or movie or game soundtracks that suit the mood. Maybe the DM describes the rainy weather, so they put on rain sounds. Maybe when the DM is calling for initiative, they queue up the combat playlist. And when the DM starts on the villain's monologue, they put on the right dramatic track. Setting up and running initiative is super important, especially if you have a big group, lots of enemies, NPCs who fight alongside the party, summoned creatures, stuff like that. Well-managed initiative can make combat go faster, but losing track of it can slow it to a crawl. A player who's in charge of initiative could have two roles. First, to compile rolls and build the initiative order. Calling for initiative can get messy really quickly with everyone shouting out numbers at once. I think it's smoother to either go around the table and ask each player individually, or to do it the way Matt does in Critical Role, where he calls for a certain range, like 25 to 20, and players speak up if their initiative falls into that range. I like that one because it allows you to build initiative in order, but neither way is wrong. Either way, if a player manages this part, DMs have a moment to get their own ducks in a row for combat, reviewing their stat blocks, laying out the map, stuff like that. The second part of this job would be to call out whose turn it is and who's up next. Personally, I think letting people know when they're up next is the single most effective tool that you can use to speed up combat. It ensures that every player can come into their turn informed on the current layout of the battlefield and prepared with their actions. Conditions and concentration can be some of the hardest things to keep track of for a DM, mostly because they don't happen on a neat schedule. Spellcasting is complicated even without thinking about concentration, and stuff like Guiding Bolt, which gives the next attack against the creature advantage, might not come up immediately if you have a lot of enemies on the battlefield, so it's easy to forget. That's why I think one of the harder jobs for players, but most useful, is to keep track of conditions and concentration. If a creature is poisoned, this player notes it down and mentions it when that creature makes an attack or a check. If somebody gets grappled, this player makes sure that everyone remembers that they're grappled on their next turn. And when someone casts a concentration spell, this player's job is to make sure that person rolls a concentration check after taking damage and doesn't cast another concentration spell without losing the first.
Welcome to my little shop. What can I do for you? Furniture, bespoke garments perhaps? Or did you see my Adventurers Wanted sign?
Actually, I'm here about today's sponsor. It's a book called Adventures from the Pot-Bellied Kobold from Jeff Stevens Games, available on DriveThruRPG, Amazon, and Fantasy Grounds. You're in it, actually.
Oh, I don't know about that. I just know about the once grand Dracodandyon Manor that overlooks our little hamlet. The eccentric dragonborn who once
Whoa, don't give everything away. What if viewers want to buy this book of 15 short adventures for 5th edition, created by an all-star cast of writers, including Kat Evans, Kat Kruger, MT Black, James Introcaso, Sly Flores, Sean Merwin, and more. It even includes tips for tying a bunch of the adventures together to create a mini campaign. You wouldn't want to spoil that.
The only thing spoiling anything is that Rogar Dracodandyon, dead as he is. I bought the manor for the incredible wealth inside, but I fear it may be full of traps, and perhaps even the supernatural.
Oh yeah, it's probably pretty dangerous. These adventures use both creatures from 5th edition and custom creatures, including some from Kobold Press's Tome of Beasts and Creature Codex. Don't worry, the Kobold Press stat blocks are included in the book.
How is that supposed to help me? 15 gold pieces each I'm offering if you clear the manor for me. I think it's more than fair.
Listen, I'm not going to the manor. Like I said, I'm just here to tell the viewers that they can pick up Adventures from the Pot-Bellied Kobold in PDF or print, and even on Fantasy Grounds. And if you want adventurers to help you out, you should want them to hear about it too.
Well, you can leave the link in the description then if you like. But then get out! You're scaring away the customers!
I mean, you're a goblin, but okay. This one will probably be a little controversial, but another job a player can have is keeping track of enemy hit points. Now, to be clear, they don't have to know the enemy's max hit points in order to do this. Personally, I really favor adding damage up instead of subtracting damage from hit point totals. The math is easier, and that way the player can just say something like, that brings the total damage to 45 after a creature is attacked. The DM can then say things like, this creature is bloodied, or can still describe enemies' deaths when they take enough damage to hit 0. Some people might say that this is kind of the main DM job, and I don't necessarily disagree, but especially if you have a DM who maybe struggles with mental math, or if you have a ton of enemies and they're having trouble keeping them all separate, this can free up the game master to focus on the enemy's strategy instead of just getting stuck doing a bunch of basic math. Of course, this might be too much power if your table includes players that tend to metagame, or if your DM really likes to keep information like resistances or immunities secret from players. This might be the kind of thing that a player handles for a particular combat, but not every combat. Again, not all of these tips will be good for every table. This is just an option. Some people take great notes, some people take terrible notes, some people don't take notes at all. At many tables, it might be useful to have one player whose specific job is taking notes, especially if you have a really good note taker in your party. It's every DM's nightmare to be asked the name of an NPC that they invented off the cuff 6 months before. Plus, if there are players in your group that have a lot of trouble taking notes or can't take notes and listen at the same time, this allows them to focus on the game. The other way this can take pressure off the DM is when it comes to session recaps. Many DMs open a new session by recapping on what happened in the last one, but that's just yet another thing the DM has to prep. Instead, make it the note taker's job to deliver a detailed recap at the beginning of each game. There are plenty of games where players each keep track of their own inventory and money, and this might never come up. But any group with a bag of holding or a home base probably knows the struggle of keeping track of what items are kept in shared storage. You might even play in a game where people don't keep individual gold, but instead keep a pool as a party. For parties like these, it can be super helpful to have a player who acts as treasurer and does inventory management. This might be the person who carries the bag of holding, for example, but it doesn't have to be. Too many hands shuffling stuff around on the battle map can be a problem, and some players might have to sit too far away from the map or can't easily stand up and move around to get a good view or move their mini. If you play at a table like that, having a battle map manager can solve a lot of problems. Is a player retreating and hiding behind an overturned wagon? The battle map manager can move the mini, count out their movement, identify if they have full or partial cover, and note whether or not they're susceptible to attacks of opportunity. Did someone just cast Fireball? They can count out that 20-foot radius and identify who takes damage. They can mark difficult terrain, they can place a spiritual weapon. This person's role is to enact whatever's being described onto the battle map. Let's face it, D&D is a rules-heavy game. Even really experienced players often need to check on things, like what certain conditions entail or the details of a complicated spell. It can be interruptive to the whole table for the DM to have to drop everything and whip out their handbook to answer any given question. But unlike questions of world building or character, rules questions like these can be answered by anyone who has access to the handbook or to the internet. That's why making a player the official rule checker can save time and trouble. While they're reading up on the details of a spell or locating the right page in the index, the rest of the table can carry on with other things so that the question doesn't hold up the whole party. The bane of all D&D games, the true total party killer, is of course scheduling. Especially if your party includes people with full-time jobs, people who travel, people with families, it can be incredibly difficult to find an evening or weekend when everyone is free to get together and play. Thankfully, there is no reason that the DM should be obligated to shoulder this particular responsibility. If you play in the kind of group where the location, date, and time of gameplay changes from week to week, making a player the designated scheduler can be a huge help. This person can inquire about everyone's availability, choose the perfect date, time, and location, and then make sure that everyone is informed about the final verdict. They can even send out a day of or day before reminder, or do things like coordinate who's bringing food. This is an out-of-game job that can keep everybody organized so they can focus on the fun part. Not every game includes world maps or city maps, but if yours does, that doesn't necessarily have to be a DM-only resource. Especially if, in-game, characters receive a map, allowing a player to be the master of geography can keep everyone oriented. It can be their job not only to answer questions about which way the party would have to travel to reach a certain destination, or what the capital city of a certain country is, but also to learn key D&D travel mechanics, like calculating how long it takes to get from point A to point B, asking the party to provide travel speed, keeping track of when travelers have pushed themselves to the point of exhaustion. If your party does a lot of travel, this job could even include things like rolling for weather or calculating rations consumption. Some DMs might even want players to actually draw out a map as the party travels through a landscape and learns what it holds. Again, you can suit this job to what your own table would benefit from. Okay, this is where this video is gonna get really controversial. This one is maybe a little off the wall and certainly wouldn't suit every table, but in a recent video, I talked about characters having living family and sometimes even family that travels with them on their adventures. And I got a comment from somebody who said they wanted to give their character living family, but they were worried that they'd be stressing out their DM by piling all of these NPCs onto their shoulders. It occurred to me, why couldn't a player roleplay an NPC that was close to them? Of course, this would work best if this character isn't a powerful or influential NPC. It's not like you want your players role-playing the king and just giving the party ultimate power. But what's the harm in letting a player run a narrative-relevant NPC? It's even possible that the player has a better idea of how their character's younger sister or boyfriend back home or kobold butler would act. To me, it feels almost like a small step past a character role-playing their own familiar. The DM can choose to put together the NPC's stats if necessary, and if the player ever isn't sure what that NPC would know or do, it's not like the DM can't step in and offer guidance. Or another way for players to help with NPCs is in combat. Maybe the DM portrays the NPC in roleplay situations, but during a fight, if the NPC is helping out, the DM hands their character sheet or stat block to a player, and that player is in charge of choosing and rolling their attacks. In fact, if you wanted to get really crazy with it, you could even do something like have each player roleplay a local shopkeeper. So every time the party goes to a certain shop, that player takes on the role of the NPC, of course working from an item list and a price sheet that the DM provides. Personally, I think if you have the kind of table that would have fun with this and could be trusted to not weaponize it for metagaming or favoritism, this kind of thing could be really charming and could ultimately lead to a wide variety of NPCs with more depth than a single DM could reasonably create. I'm gonna be real with you, I'm a person who can sometimes struggle to break out of self-imposed restrictions. I often find myself clinging to rules, even imagined rules. I basically trap myself into a cage that I built for myself. So it took me a long time to start to think about D&D this way. And yeah, D&D has some pretty firm rules, but if you're just playing a home game for fun, you're allowed to redraw those lines between what players do and what DMs do. You have the power to rewrite the rules. Remember, it's a game, and in order to play it, the most important thing is that we all enter into a good faith agreement to participate in a way that's fun for everyone. If changes like these would help your game run more smoothly, protect your DM from burnout or feeling overwhelmed, and help players stay focused on the game, you can make those changes. I think giving players jobs like these can really help bring everyone together under the common cause of running a really awesome game. What do you think? Do your players have jobs? Do you think giving players jobs would improve your game? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments.